Okay, everyone. Welcome to this new podcast that I'm introducing for the sake of this class. I just want to welcome everyone back onto the show. We have a very special guest here today, Mr. McClelland. He is so he does this super cool thing that he does back where he lives in Draper. It's called Broadway Kids. Basically what happens is he takes a bunch of kids in his neighborhood and around that area, and he puts on a show that he writes for himself in order to give those kids an opportunity. So, Mr. McClelland, do you want to just explain to us kind of the general overview of and purpose of and what you do there?
Yeah, so Broadway Kids is a musical review, but it's a training program at the same time. So you have, it's about 100 kids per summer. It used to be in the spring, now it's in the summer. We try to make it something that they can really have lots of equal participation in. So we'll do like 20 to 30 musical numbers. Those are not all originals. It's a review from other sources, and we put it together.
What do you mean by review from other sources?
I mean, like, we take pop music and show tunes and put them all together. Yeah, we pay the royalties through the licensing of the karaoke tracks rather than through a theater company.
So, what are some examples of what you've done before?
Well, there was, we did one called The Care and Keeping of Magical Creatures, where the story kind of always is about, at least it's gone through several evolutions, but right now we tend to deal with a story that has magical symbols for real kid problems. So we had a family of 5 kids, each of them with their own problems and their own magical pets that help them to get out of it. So, like, you know, well, you remember flying on a dragon, singing Disco Inferno, while at the same time expressing your angst and desire as a teenager to throw it all down, you know, so burn it all down.
Sounds super fun. Can you give us just a summary of the vision, goals, and mission statements that you do?
Yeah, well, I haven't, I actually did this started at Draper Historic Theater. At Draper Historic Theater, we had all of that. We had the mission statement, the charitable values, and all that kind of thing. Since then, it's morphed a little bit because we've left Draper Historic Theater, which is the Draper Arts Council. But still, my personal mission is to make sure that every kid gets a moment in the sun, that everybody builds skills as far as how they go, and that it's extremely affordable. You know, most programs like mine require hundreds of dollars of tuition, if not, you know, in the $1,000 range. But we just charge a $50 fee that they can work off if they need to, and then it's really the families and the ticket sales that sponsor the program, plus the grants from the Arts Council. So it's really kind of a unique situation as far as the charity of it goes, because most of the time if you want that kind of training, you do pay for it. Here you're able to you're able to work at it, you're able to have your friends and family pay for it through ticket sales, and they get a great show, and you get the experience. So it's kind of an interesting mix. You know, in order to make that happen, though, the show has to be decent, right? So the biggest problem with the tuition-based programs is their emphasis can be even more on each kid gets to do such and such and such and such, and every kid has a line. Can't always do that when you're trying to actually tell a story that people will buy tickets for, but we still find unique and interesting ways that each kid is growing and developing. Each kid has their moment on the front row, and where the focus is all in them is the artistic goal as well as the charitable goal.
So how do you think this sort of giving each kid a turn in the spotlight affects those kids as they kind of grow up, and how that affects their view of theater and just in general help them?
Well, you know, it's been really interesting this is going to be the 21st year.
Oh, wow.
So I have kids that are getting close to 40 that have that did Broadway Kids, because it's from 5 to 18. So, although
got a
sometimes...
bit of a device to the pool?
Yeah, so, you know, sometimes it's, you know, I've had kids who have gone on from this program and had those shows and maybe a few other shows like it that have gone on to major in dance, with only dance training is Broadway Kids, minor in dance. Minor in dance. I've had kids, you know, on the extremes, we have kids who, we had Austin Archer, who is now one of the regular actors at Pioneer Theater Company. Mackenzie Tolk, who has a recording career. You hear her on the radio in Salt Lake all the time. It's local, it's LDS, but we have kids who've gone on to make feature films who I just reconnected a couple years ago with a kid that was in Broadway Kids when he was 10, and then now he is the personal assistant of a guy on Broadway, a Broadway director.
Oh, wow.
So I have a lot, and he says, and what's really interesting is he says that he did that when he was like 10, and then throughout his career and training, he's connected with other Broadway kids from different years at different times, and so it's kind of this interconnected thing. On the other
being
end,
a part of Broadway Kids is kind of like being part of a cool little club.
Exactly, and they're all over the place, because it's 20 years, 100 kids a year, so.
Yeah, no.
On the other end, though, you have, kids who are autistic or who are very shy, and at least they can solve problems better for themselves now. I remember one kid who was always afraid to, we'd go out, back in the day before I had my own kids, and so I was like going home. They would go out to dinner, and he'd have his brother order for him. He couldn't talk to the waiter, stuff like that. And watching him grow, he's now directing theater in, I think, Riverton.
Oh, wow. So I find it must be like difficult to maybe direct some of these kids. Like, how do you go about directing kids who maybe need a little more help, or even helping kids who don't need that much help in order to organize? Because I know that can be a really big problem sometimes.
Well, I spread it all out on this big, I call it the human Sudoku. So I list the show numbers across the top and all the scenes, and I list all the kids down, and I make this huge puzzle so that I'm only working with, most of the time only 20 kids at a time. At the end for the finale, then, it's 100 kids at a time. But I have other co-directors that help, and we make sure that parents, the little ones, their parents are required to be there. So if they're under 8...
Just at the rehearsals?
Mm-hmm, at rehearsals. And it takes a lot of parent volunteer work, but so many people believe in what theater can do for kids, they're willing to make it happen, and it's really an awesome experience.
Awesome. So what led you to this kind of... What brought you to this spot and doing this for kids?
Well, I was teaching math, which is...
A little different than theater.
Yeah, it's good. It's good. It has its things, It was my former high school theater teacher and the owner of Draper Historic Theater, Vanessa Nelson. The three of us kind of put our heads together. They were doing... At Draper Historic Theater, they're doing a review for adults. Same kind of thing. It was actually featuring Robert Peterson, who was a great Broadway actor who was from Utah and came back home and wanted to do local things.
Well,
that's where it came from, was a pattern based on that. And then it has kind of mushroomed out of control. The first one was only 85.
just a rough.
And we tried to keep it capped at 85 because there was a small theater at DHT, is a little tiny converted movie theater, and sometimes, it was like got to keep it low because there's not dressing room space or anything like that. And yet it really flourished there.
Wow.
We'd do 13 shows each year for all the weekends for a whole month, and it was cool. So it's really grown and blossomed from that place.
Yeah, that's super cool. I think that's everything that I needed. It's super cool that you do this, and Broadway Kids is something that happens every summer if you ever move down to Draper. But
you can commute. We've had a few from.
Yeah, it's been a couple.
A few high school students from East. Kids who know me tend to want to work with me even more, which I don't understand. It's like keeping school going all year for all of us. So, but anyway, yeah, it's good.
Yeah, it was super great to have you on the show. That is definitely going to be continuing after this one interview. But thanks for everyone for coming out tonight. You can find our podcast at all your local podcast stations, Apple Play Podcasts, I messed that up. Good night.